And I would like to introduce Louise, who's did this project together in Royal Danish, and she's from Sweden.
Yes, let me just see how this works.
Yeah, so I was Tamāra's partner, and me as a Scandinavian and alongside many other of my class students, when we first got this assignment, we just asked, why won't people just go together in an association and renovate? Because for us, that is sort of the obvious solution. And the Latvians in our course said, no, that's just not how we do it. So for us, it was very important to look at the historical, political, economical, and societal background to understand that the issues of the microrayons lies on many levels, not only pure physical and on a building level, but also on a societal level. So as this image shows, that there has been this very shift from queuing due to scarcity to queuing because of hyperconsumerism. And there has been a shift from this thinking of extreme collective to extreme individualism. There has also been a shift from everything completely state-owned to everything completely privately owned. And as many images have shown before, like Dean showed, that there's an obvious urge to renovate and to improve your home conditions, but there's also this unwillingness to cooperate, which has led to the fact that only 2% have been of the exteriors have been renovated. And you can see this obvious clash between these highly designed interiors and these very bleak exteriors. And if we look at the current economic conditions of Latvia, Latvia is one of the poorest countries in the EU and has one of the lowest median incomes. But there's also a quite high gap of income gap, so that some people do have money and some people don't. And there's a quite high percentage of people living on the border of social exclusion. And the reason for this economic development, you can see in this graph, so you can first see the fall of the planned economy and the Soviet, and also then what some people call the fall of the capitalist economy with the market crash of 2008. So this leads us to our urban analysis, because we were interested in seeing how this economic history is reflected in the urban tissue of Riga. And at the beginning of the 20th century, Riga was mostly centered around the city center. But during the Soviet times, the heavy industrialization led to the expansion of the city. And there also was then the need to house the workers, and the idea that you should live and work in the same place, so i.e. the development of the microrayons. But as the fall of the Soviet, so fell the industry, and the collapse of the industries left the microrayons as sort of sleepy archipelagos. But 68% of the inhabitants live here, so what happens in these places and the urban development there has quite a significant impact on the daily lives of the city and the residents. And these factories that once were quite important in the daily life are now just left as gaping holes in the urban tissue.
So what we were interested in is this paradox of space which occurs between the extremely densely populated and cramped typical mass housing units and this abandoned industry sites. So we were looking both at the cramped in terms of things, but as well in terms of activities which take place there. And so we were looking what of this could be taken out of the domestic four walls and benefit from it. So what we're proposing is not just looking back, but it's actually looking to the future, because many thinkers now are thinking, what shall we do after the crisis, and what's the other way, the ways of developing beyond the capitalism, and what could be the way of sharing our resources, both material and immaterial, in a more collaborative way. But what interests us the most is not just the material benefit people would get from it, but more about the relational goods which evolve from this situation, from sharing things. That's actually about the building community around things. So what we propose is a spatial platform for creation of this relational good in an old factory to become a heart of a microrayon and serve as a meeting place and facilitator for communal activities. So what we did, we analyzed the cases of our friends and the people we know from micro-Ryans, and looked at the objects which could be outsourced. For example, like children toys which you don't use anymore, or tools which you can share, kitchen equipment, wearables, and as well immaterial things like skills or favors. Here, and then we looked in terms of activities which can be taken out and taken place in communal spaces, larger. But the main question we asked, why would people be interested in sharing? And first, that they need to see some benefit for them. They would improve their living condition, and as well get an access to much more tools and services. So you've seen the situation on a whole map of Riga. It's actually, you have lots of abandoned factories, but we've chosen our site, Tengraks, which is only 20 minutes away and which has 53,000 inhabitants. So here you see the urban fabric with factories, railways, schools, mass housing area, and the river. So that's the Quadrat's former rubber factory, which has 24,000 unused square meters. So what we propose, I will talk first about the program. So basically, how do we relocate these resources and use them communally? So the main program is based around storing things, but we see storage not as something passive, but as something which can be shared, reused, and what is someone's waste can be a treasure for another one. So here is an example, how could it work, for example, with tools when you use them, which you use actually about once per 2 months, and can be relocated into the factory and then become a workshop. At the same moment, freeing up your balcony. Or for example, all the kitchen equipment and the tables, the furniture you use for a bigger celebration. When they're taking place communally, you could allow yourself for a much bigger space and bigger access to all this equipment. Or for example, a working space, while transferred from a separate unit into a communal space, it becomes a co-working space. And actually the benefit is not only access to the printer and computers, but as well access to the network. And of course, children, toys and equipment we see is amazing potential to be shared and reused in many ways. Now talking about the building itself. So we see a building as a shell, and we don't propose a classical renovation which would be extremely expensive, but something which would actually be affordable. So we would reuse the old cores and then integrate the shelf for the storage and insert the rooms within it. So as I already mentioned, we treat it as an outdoor space with an internal street which goes through all the building. How the access works, because of course some things can be just given away, but some should be rented or reused. So as well the shelf can be closed or opened. So here you can see how the shelf is divided for the along the staircase with the open access, then with the giveaway parts, upcycling, and then a limited one for storage. Here are the rooms I explained before. And this is how the circulation would happen, with the elevators, the stair through all the volumes. And circulation at night, because you obviously don't need only the place, as we call vinyl bars, where you could exchange your all CDs, would work. And for example, the music room on top, as well using the roof potential. And during the event space where we could open up the top floor as well. We imagined this as a staircase and the shelf and the side one side is more densely populated with the rooms, and another we will leave open for the expansion. Treating everything as an outdoor space, so we don't touch the shell of the factory, we just conserve it, and then we put the insulated rooms inside. That's a detail of the shelf, how the shelf is connected to the unit, and we proposed as well to sort of use this collapse of economy in 2008 when we had a building boom and many buildings were already started in Latvia and windows were ordered. And at the moment you can buy lots of them quite cheap but of different sizes. So we thought how could we reuse this existing economical potential. And the landscape strategy.
Yeah, so... Oh, sorry about that. But the factory is situated in quite nice surroundings by the waterfront, and it finishes off this newly renovated promenade that goes all the way down there, that you can see here, which is there. But the factory is closed off visually. It's very visually inaccessible because it's fenced off and with walls all around. So our main... And also the building itself is very easy for an architect to romanticize about this like high ceiling height and the vastness and the landscape which creeps in. But as Tamāra said, it would be not so very economically viable to renovate the entire building. So we decided to treat it almost as an outdoor space where we would allow the existing landscape to creep in and inform the design and landscaping of it, but also in particular the access to the ground floor. So this is a site plan of the current conditions, where you can see the site here, which is, it has some green elements, but it's quite visually shut off from both the shopping center, which is here, and the surrounding micro-rayons and the promenade, which goes here. And our main strategy would be to open it up and connect the areas with thin green belts, which would work as visual connectors and lead the public through the site and actually through the building and down to the waterfront. And here you can see a zoom in of our proposed plan. Where you can see the landscape creeping through. You can see the start of the staircase and the shelf, and then the insulated boxes, which were located on the ground floor. And if we zoom out and discuss our ideas of possible scenarios, we would propose an urban development which is focused not only on the city center, but on the microareas as a whole, to develop a more multinodal idea of the urban development and not just so city center focused. And because there are factories scattered all around these microrails, we believe that this programmatic scheme could be implemented in more sites than our proposed, to actually develop and create a more livable city for the whole city and not just the city center. Thank you.